Did you know the United States almost tore itself apart from within? What if I told you families, neighbors, and entire cities were divided by a single, powerful question? Freedom for all. Imagine the thunder of cannons echoing across vast landscapes, the air thick with the smoke of battle, and in the midst of it all a flicker of hope rising in the hearts of millions who had only ever known bondage. And here's the part that changed the world forever. Out of this devastating conflict, one of the bloodiest in American history, came a new, hard-won chapter for equality. This is the story of the American Civil War, a conflict that redefined a nation. By the 1860s, America was a house divided against itself. The country was split, not just geographically, but ideologically and economically. The North was a hub of industrial might, with factories humming, railroads crisscrossing the land, and a population swelled by immigrants seeking new opportunities. It was a society moving rapidly into the modern age. In stark contrast, the South's economy was overwhelmingly agricultural. Its wealth was built on the backs of millions of enslaved people, who toiled on vast plantations growing cotton, tobacco, and rice. This reliance on forced labor created a society with a rigid social hierarchy and a deep-seated fear of change. For decades, tensions had simmered. Debates over slavery weren't just about morality. They were about power. As the United States expanded westward, the question of whether new territories would permit slavery became a flashpoint. Would the balance of power in Congress tip in favor of the North or the South? Alongside this were fierce arguments about states' rights, the idea that individual states should have the power to reject federal laws they disagreed with, and deep economic divides over tariffs and trade. By 1860, the breaking point had been reached. With the election of Abraham Lincoln, a president who opposed the expansion of slavery, Southern leaders saw their way of life under threat. Believing their economic and political interests were no longer represented, one by one, 11 Southern states seceded from the Union to form the Confederate States of America. The stage was set for a war unlike any America had ever seen before, a war of brother against brother. It all began on a spring morning in April 1861, at Fort Sumter, a Union stronghold in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina. When Confederate cannons opened fire on the fort, those first shots were a deafening declaration that diplomacy had failed. The Civil War had begun. The initial response was a wave of patriotic fervor on both sides. Young men, full of bravado and a sense of adventure, rushed to enlist, convinced the war would be over in a matter of months. They left behind their farms, their families, and the lives they knew, marching off to fight for causes they held dear: the Union for the North and independence for the South. But the romantic notions of war quickly dissolved into a brutal reality. Families were torn apart, with brothers, cousins, and fathers sometimes finding themselves on opposite sides of the battlefield. The scale of the conflict was staggering. Armies clashed in epic, bloody battles that would become etched into the nation's memory. Antietam, the single bloodiest day in American history. Gettysburg, a monumental three-day struggle that would become a turning point. And Shiloh, a brutal confrontation in the West that shocked both sides with its high casualties. The cost was unimaginable. Lush fields and quiet woods were transformed into graveyards overnight. The skies were often choked with the smoke from cannon and rifle fire, a constant, grim reminder of the destruction unfolding below. This was not a quick, glorious affair. It was a long, grinding war of attrition that would test the resolve of an entire generation. At the heart of the North, leading a fractured nation through its darkest hour, stood President Abraham Lincoln. A man of humble origins, Lincoln possessed a powerful intellect and an unyielding determination to preserve the Union. He understood that the conflict was not just about territory or politics. It was a test of the very principles upon which the United States was founded. His words became a rallying cry for the Union cause. Through speeches like the Gettysburg Address, he inspired millions, eloquently framing the war as a struggle for justice, humanity, and the enduring promise of a new birth of freedom. He reminded the nation and the world that the survival of democracy itself was at stake. Then, in 1863, Lincoln took a step that would forever change the course of the war and the nation. He issued the Emancipation Proclamation. While it was a strategic military order and did not instantly free all enslaved people, it applied only to those in the rebelling Confederate states. Its impact was profound. It officially transformed the purpose of the war. It was no longer just a fight to keep the country together. It was now explicitly a fight to end slavery and liberate millions. The moral high ground was firmly in the hands of the Union, and the conflict took on a new revolutionary meaning. For the first 2 years of the war, the outcome was far from certain. The Confederacy, with its brilliant military leadership under generals like Robert E. Lee, had won a series of stunning victories. But in the summer of 1863, the tide began to shift decisively. In the West, General Ulysses S. Grant, after a long and difficult siege, captured the fortress city of Vicksburg, Mississippi. This victory gave the Union complete control of the Mississippi River, effectively splitting the Confederacy in two and cutting off crucial supply lines. At the very same time, hundreds of miles to the east, the Union Army achieved a monumental victory at the Battle of Gettysburg in Pennsylvania. General Lee's bold invasion of the North was turned back in 3 days of horrific fighting, marking the high watermark of the Confederacy. From that point on, the Confederate Army would be largely on the defensive. As the Union Army gained strength, fueled by its industrial might and superior numbers, Southern forces faced a grim reality of dwindling supplies, rampant inflation, and sheer exhaustion. Meanwhile, quieter but equally powerful revolution was taking place. Enslaved people, hearing of the Emancipation Proclamation and seeing the Union Army's advance as a beacon of hope, began to escape plantations in massive numbers. They sought refuge behind Union lines, formed their own communities, and provided critical intelligence, labor, and eventually, soldiers for the Union cause. Step by step, battle by battle, and life by life, the country was being painfully and irreversibly remade. By the spring of 1865, the Confederacy was collapsing. After 4 long, brutal years, the end finally came in a quiet Virginia town called Appomattox Courthouse. On April 9th, Confederate General Robert E. Lee, his army surrounded and exhausted, met with Union General Ulysses S. Grant and formally surrendered the Army of Northern Virginia. The fighting was over. The roar of cannons fell silent. The Union, which had been pushed to the very brink of dissolution, was preserved. And most momentously, 4 million people who had been held in bondage were now, by law and by the force of arms, free from the chains of slavery. But the silence on the battlefields did not mean peace was immediate. The scars of war ran deep. Entire cities lay in ruins. The Southern economy was shattered, and nearly every family in the nation, North and South, was grieving the loss of a loved one. The country faced the monumental task of rebuilding not just its towns and infrastructure, but its very soul. A new, difficult chapter, the era of Reconstruction, was about to begin. The American Civil War serves as a powerful and sobering reminder that freedom is never free. It is earned through immense courage, profound sacrifice, and the unwavering will to fight for justice, even when the cost seems impossibly high. It's a story of a nation confronting its deepest contradictions and, through a crucible of fire and blood, striving to live up to its own founding ideals. Imagine the incredible bravery of the soldiers who faced unimaginable horrors, of the leaders who bore the weight of a nation on their shoulders, and of the enslaved people who risked everything they had for a chance at liberty. What would you do if your life, your home, and your country were on the line for a cause you believed was greater than yourself? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. And if you want to uncover more incredible stories of courage and change from the annals of history, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.